Hey everyone, this is Pete. Welcome back to Atari ST A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari ST games, some of which I grew up with and some of which are new to me. Today is one of the former. This is James Pond Underwater Agent, which is actually a reasonably well-known game in 1990 or so, because it was available not just on home computers at the time, but also quite a few consoles as well. So this first game also came out on the Mega Drive, if I remember correctly. And its sequel, Robocod, got several ports onto a number of different platforms as well. I did play Robocod a bit, but James Pond is the one that I have the most experience with. And yeah, it's a game I've always quite enjoyed. It's a very simple idea. It's the old sort of rescue mission style gameplay. So what you're doing in this is you are proceeding around various levels, attempting to free lobsters who are trapped in cages. And you free them from cages by collecting keys and unlocking the cages. And then there are various secret parts of each level that you can sneak into like that to get extra points. There are various hostile fish as well that you shoot bubbles at, a bit like in Bubble Bubble, and then burst the bubbles to get rid of them. And then you figure things out from there. So like a lot of games of the period, you don't have to rescue every lobster on the level in order to open up the exit. But you do get extra points if you do, so... This was also a very British game, so it had things like... you probably saw him getting a bottle of Jack Daniels there and being drunk for a few moments. That plays havoc with your controls and that sort of thing. So I always used to like this game because it's got nice graphics, it's got really nice use of colour, and it's fun to play. There are a number of flaws to the experience. As you can probably see, one of the biggest ones is the fact that there's no invincibility frames when you get hit. And so that means if you're not careful, you can find yourself losing several lives in one go, simply because you get hit by something, you die on top of something, and that causes you to immediately lose another life if you don't move out of the way straight away. And there's also annoying things like objects that would kill you straight away as well, like we had there. So, let's pop in our name and have another go. Hopefully do a little bit better this time. So this was the work of, I believe, a guy called Steve Back was involved. He worked on a number of Atari ST games that were quite well received. He often partnered with a guy called Pete Lyon as well. I think he might have been involved with this as well. I forget exactly. I'll have to check back on the credit screen on the start of the game, which doesn't appear to want to come back at the minute. Oh well. Let's just have another go. But yeah, as I was saying before, I like this because it had really nice use of colour. So it uses some graphical trickery to kind of get more colours on screen than the ST normally handles. It doesn't do it in the most elegant way possible. You can probably see there's a few little graphical glitches here and there as that is happening. But on old TVs, things like that were less noticeable. And this was a good example of a number of different games in the early 90s that kind of played on the fashionable interest in the environment at the time. I know sort of environmental issues have since become like a hot topic again ever since, because of like climate change, global warming, that sort of thing. But in the early 90s as well, it was a very fashionable thing for particularly kids to get involved with. As I remember, there were publications like Fast Forward magazine. They would often sort of highlight environmental issues, and there were also a lot of video games that played with that idea as well. And James Pond was one of those. So the whole idea of this is sort of this a very strong kind of anti-pollution message in here. So a lot of the levels are based around... So we've got an oil rig that's leaking oil all over the place here. A lot of things you pick up are rubbish as well, that's been dumped in the sea. Toilet rolls in this case. But the whole thing with James Pond is it put quite a sort of cheerful spin on it. So it didn't take itself too seriously or anything like that. And obviously something like... oops. Yeah, you see how quickly your energy depletes there when you get hit by something. Simply because this... It doesn't give you any time to be invincible. But yes, in this level, because we're not rescuing lobsters, we're instead finding chunks of dynamite to blow up an oil rig. I'm not sure that's an entirely wholesome message to send, but, you know, environmental terrorism. Still, like I say, it puts a sort of light-hearted angle on things. Its cartoony presentation means that you're not supposed to take it too seriously or anything like that, but... And it allows the game to have a sort of consistent theme throughout as well, while still exploring a number of different ideas along the way. And James Pond was a character who had a bit of personality to him as well. I mean, by the end of his gaming career, he had sort of a few too many games, and they were starting to get a bit, well, crap. As anyone who ever played the his sort of Olympic Games one will attest, the later James Pond games were not particularly good. But back when this came out, this was a very well received game on whatever platform it came out for. And yeah, it's still pretty fun today. Like I say, some of those flaws are a lot more apparent now than they were back in the day. Things like sort of repeatedly taking damage without any shielding and that kind of thing. But besides that, it's still a bit of fun. Still worth a play. Even in its ST incarnation here. So I mean, it's not the best version by any means. So if you want that, you'll probably want to go for the Mega Drive version instead, but it's still pretty solid. And despite not being a hugely high-profile game or anything like that, it was well received at the time. It still looks nice. It's a decent showcase of what the ST is capable of in terms of both graphics and sound. I mean, sound being the weak point, as it usually is in ST games, but certainly the graphics are more than presentable. Alright, on to the next level. So you see, like a lot of sort of arcade style games at the time, you often have the opportunity to skip a few levels at a time as well. So if you're particularly comfortable with the early levels, the end of level 1, you have the opportunity to skip straight to level 3, for example. Evidently level 4 is my limit though. So, alright, let's leave that there for today. That is James Pond, Underwater Agent. Published by, I believe it was Millennium, if I remember correctly. But yeah, a game worth checking out. As I say, the ST version may not be the best one on the market, but it's the one I had the most experience with growing up. And so, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. New episodes of Atari A to Z are on Tuesdays and Atari ST A to Z on Thursdays. Check out atariatoz.wordpress.com for a full archive. Do please also check out my other projects moegamer.net, where I explore Japanese and Japanese-inspired games from yesterday and today, and videopackgames.wordpress.com, which aims to catalogue a small but well-formed library of the Philips G7000 Videopack computer, also known as the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You can also support my work on Patreon or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.